Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeff Malinoff, and, well, I was going to say with me on the voices of Mark Souza, but he's not here. Still got to get used to that. Regardless, I hope I'm fine as a replacement, or not a replacement, just me, little old me. Anyways, moving on. Got a lot to talk about in the world of basketball. We got some Utah State and Nevada stuff to talk about. We'll get more in detail on that. It's mainly after the game that's the most interesting. As well as we got the Lakers and how that's all going down. Because, well, they're going down. I guess that's just the best way to describe it. And also we'll talk about some of the eighth seed in the NBA Western Conference and how close that battle is between Lakers, Kings, and Clippers. You can even add the Spurs to that mix as well. So we'll get on that later as well. As well as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's very selfless donation he made regarding his championships and MVP titles. So let's kick things off with Utah State, Nevada, because that is a kind of an important topic to talk about overall. So after the Nevada game, so Nevada is number 12 in the nation at this time. Well, they were Saturday. They were upset by unranked Utah State 81-76. And that wasn't the biggest news story of this whole game. As after the game happened, the Utah State fans charged the court. I understand that there's controversy behind that as well, just based off of the fact that, like, they have no restriction towards the other players. They are allowed to run on the court and anything could happen at that time. So you're also adding the fact that you're putting kind of the players in danger because you have no idea how over-the-top fans can get at the opposing team, regardless of win, lose, or draw type of thing. And so there apparently was some pushing and name-calling and hurtful things, but it kind of went bad as soon as they went into the tunnel after the game, as a guy on Nevada's team, I believe he was even a starter, his name was Jordan Caroline. He apparently was called a slur by a Utah State assistant coach when the controversy happened. That is, we were looking at it as the fact of he punched a glass case for a fire extinguisher and it broke. Well, it kind of cracked and shattered a little bit. And after that, he was said, "You don't call me I'm just going to say it." He said, no, I'm not going to actually say it, but you don't call me the N-word. And obviously that triggered him into a fit of rage and really upset him into a point where he wanted to hurt the guy, or fight the guy at least. And what I will say is, first things first, you don't call someone that you don't know. Any reason whatsoever, I don't like that word. Because even to me, it's uncomfortable because it doesn't feel right to say it. Like I think there's never a good point to say that. You know what I mean? It just never. I'm not going to get into it. I just think that's a very offensive word. And with that, I also add to the facts that what assistant coach is saying that to a college student? Because that's what these kids are. They're college students. They're just kids. And you're calling one this derogatory slur after a basketball game. Whoever this coach is, if this is true, should be fired on the spot. As soon as they find out if it's true or not, he should be gone. Fired. No excuse. There's no excuse for a coach, an assistant coach, I don't care how old he is, an assistant coach to say words like that to a player is unacceptable at all. Never, no way that's acceptable. Not in this day and age, not in any day and age. Because as an assistant coach, first of all, you're not even the head coach, so why are you talking trash? And what gives you the right to call him that? There's absolutely no right. You have no at liberty to say why you have the right to say that to him. And that is not being a good influence on the players you're helping coach. Because they're like, oh, if he can say it, I'll say it too. Like, I think that's just part of the team's, the Utah State way. In like, just using it as a random example. Because you are so below morals that you call someone that after a basketball game. That is the definition of poor sportsmanship. And it's college basketball. Yeah, I know you beat a ranked top 15 team in the nation in Nevada. I know that's exciting. But you don't call a man that word after that loss. It just drives me crazy how sometimes in the heat of the moment you say something you regret. I get that. But there's some things that you should never be in the heat of the moment to even think about saying. And that's one of them. And when you think of assistant coach, I'm thinking maybe he's in his early, maybe mid-20s. But he could be in his 30s for all we know, and he could have easily called him that. I mean, and it's just incredibly unprofessional. I think the guy should be fired if this turns out to be true. This whole insult statement about him throwing slurs at Jordan Caroline. And after a disappointing loss, and having to go through all the fans, which is probably not easy to get through the exit to, and then having to deal with an assistant coach saying that in the tunnel, it really triggered Jordan Caroline, and I kind of understand why. He obviously, physical altercation is never the answer, but the fact that he was angry is understandable. Why he was angry is understandable. The why he wanted physical altercation is not acceptable. And then some of the coaches for Nevada were like, why are they grabbing our guys? Why are they talking trash to our guys? And then security was kind of pulling away, and Jordan Caroline was the instigator. But who knows what the actual instigator was. There's still a lot of unanswered questions when it comes down to the Nevada-Utah State incident. They're being reviewed right now by the NCAA. I think there's some investigations. And Nevada's working with Utah State and all those other things. And there's just a lot of unanswered questions that have not been answered yet, but hopefully will be answered. And we'll have more information when it comes down to it. But I think the bottom line is, if, like I said, if he actually did say these things to a player, to a kid that's 18, 19 years old, you are absolutely in the wrong. That is unacceptable, and that should never be around sports in general. And so I think it's incredibly wrong for that to even take place, or any type of altercation that led by that should be allowed. So that's just my take on it. I just don't think I don't think it should be tolerated. That's just the bottom line. And I understand if Jordan Caroline gets a punishment because he did kind of technically break their property because he broke the fire extinguisher glass case. I guess it was kind of shattered. The video. There's a video named. And by the way, if you watch that video, that's pretty explicit language. So be careful if you have sensitive ears. Do not listen to it. But I think the bottom line is there's lines you don't cross when it comes down to sports, and calling someone that slur or just trying to offend them in any way, shape, or form is a major offense, and it should not be tolerated in sports. There's something called sportsmanship that people are forgetting a lot recently, and I feel like we're losing touch with that. I really do. So hopefully this all works out and this all blows over, but it was just a bad time, just a little dark moment right there, bottom line. As for the rest of the NCAA polls, they've been just announced in the AP polls. Gonzaga is still at number 1 at the moment after Week 18. And heading into March, we're on the road to March Madness in the month of March. And so the top 10? I think that's fair to say. So the top 10 is 1 Gonzaga, 2 Virginia, and 3 North Carolina. 4 is Duke. They lost to North Carolina, so that's why they kind of dropped. And of course, Zion, with his little injury, brings concern to the team for sure. But if Zion does come back for the tournament, I think they'll be the heavy favorites to win it. So that's just that case. Tennessee, number 5. Kentucky, number 6. Michigan, number 7. Texas Tech at number 8. Michigan State, number 9. And LSU at number 10. And so that's the top 10 for now. The rest of the top 25. UCF is actually in this top 25 also. So not only were they in the top 25 in football, they're also in the top 25 in basketball. For a smaller school in the city, in the area of Florida, it's pretty impressive, all things considered. But there've been a lot of falls of certain teams. Like I don't think I even saw a Pac-12 team in this list. I could be wrong though, but let's see. I don't see one. And usually the Pac-12 kind of is known for its basketball, like UCLA, Arizona, and all of them are even struggling. So very difficult to see all this happen. And then Villanova, the former champions a couple years ago, are number 23 right now. So just how fast people drop because of the draft and everything. But regardless, that's what it's all coming down to. But we're going to take a quick, short break. And when we come back, we'll talk about LeBron and the Lakers and the big question mark that holds above their heads. We'll get on that when we return.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last time we left off, we talked about some college basketball. Now let's get back into the NBA. Most notably, the Los Angeles Lakers. Usually, well, let's just start off with this. When we first started this whole NBA season, when LeBron signed with the Lakers on that 4-year deal, everyone thought immediately that we had a championship contender and a threat to the Warriors' reign in the West with the LA Lakers now that LeBron has made it West. But I think a lot of people forgot that there is something crucial to think about when it comes to the LA Lakers. His supporting cast is not the best. When it comes down to, there's still a lot of talented players on that team for sure. Kuzma, Ingram, I put Ball in there, Josh Hart. There are talented players in there. But when it comes down to it, they still need a lot more marinating. They still need more work before becoming a winning team. It's just a fact. And with that, I add, LeBron has not made anything better with the trade for Anthony Davis and the talks he wants to play with Anthony Davis. That didn't make things any better. And there's also the big factor in one crucial detail is that the Lakers are not doing very good right now. I know that's stating the obvious, but it's important to state that the Lakers are not the team we thought they were. They were overhyped and overrated. maybe that's not true to some people, but to be honest, it is true. We thought they had a chance to playoffs because LeBron has so often than not gotten to the playoffs in his career. Last time he missed the playoffs was 2004. That was his second year in the NBA. And so he was just getting started there. So when it came down to how he's going to improve, he improved over and over and over again when it came down to playoffs after championship runs, going to the finals. But, you know, when it comes down to it, yeah, he's been to multiple finals. He went to every single final since 2011. But we're about to see for the first time in this decade, he will not make the playoffs. I'll call it right now. Because they're 30 and 33 right now. So they're way behind compared to the Clippers and the Spurs, who are in the same kind of, I think, one loss different between them two when it comes down to the playoff race for 7th and 8th seed. The Kings are number 9 at 31-31. The Lakers are kind of close to that, but the Kings have a pretty easy schedule ahead of them. The next two games out of the 3 games they have going in the next coming weeks is twice against the Knicks and once against the Celtics. Celtics are struggling, and the Knicks are one of the worst teams in the NBA. So they're at a disadvantage. The Lakers are there with that circumstance that the Kings have an easy schedule. And tonight they play the Clippers. With the Clippers, the Lakers, need to win this. I say this is a must-win game, not just because it's against a seeded Clippers team that they're trying to take that away from them and try to make it to the playoffs, because they're obviously trying to win now. I think that's a given. So with that, I have to say it's important to realize that the Lakers may not be a playoff team. They might be in they probably don't want to accept this fact, but they have to rebuild for next season. Because there is a long shot to get into the playoffs right now. And honestly, I don't see it happening. I just honestly don't see it happening. Because I just see so many different key factors against them. So with that, I also want to look at the facts that LeBron is also struggling. I mean, LeBron had 27 points, 16 assists game against the Suns. But there is where the problem lies. They lost to the Suns. That is a firm confirmation to me that this team is looking downhill. They lost to the worst team in the West and arguably the entire NBA. And I say with that, I add, how can they come back from that? How can they survive that, if you will? And, well, maybe survive is a strong word. How can they come back from that? How can they make a comeback from that? Because it's not easy. And they've lost. They've been 3-7 in the last 10 games. That also hurts. And being so behind at the 10th spot with not much time left in the season, all things considered, it just feels like that this is a time where LeBron collapses. And honestly, the infamous debate between Michael Jordan and LeBron James, who's the GOAT, if he misses the playoffs here, this is going to hurt him in that debate. And it might even hurt his legacy in the long run, because he's like, oh, he went to a Lakers team. They thought they were going to be instant winners, and they're not. But you also have to add an important fact that this, again, this is a brand new team for him. He's into this harsh schedule with the Lakers because the Western Conference schedule is not easy. And maybe I don't want to say he took anything for granted, but he had a pretty easy going with the Eastern Conference, all things considered. And I think that's what mainly people had a problem with, is that he was in an easy circumstance when it comes down to looking at schedule-wise. And, you know, it's just hard to really look at it as, like, to blame LeBron. But there are instances where you can blame LeBron James here. One, the Anthony Davis situation, where he was talking like he wants to play with Anthony Davis. He loved to play for Anthony Davis, with Anthony Davis. And this whole trade, the Lakers offered every single young man that they had that were talented and multiple first round pick for him. That put everyone at like, oh, we're expendable, so what's the point of playing? Which I understand that kind of circumstance, because that would also affect my morale as well. It's like, so I'm just easy to get rid of. I'm just not worth this trouble, in a sense. And with that, I also add to the fact that he might just be a problem. He might just be the problem. Like, everyone has a problem with him now in the locker room, because now they feel expendable, which is not a good feeling. And they're playing bad. Losing to the Suns made it worse. And what Zubac said after the Clippers won, I think he was like, this is a better feeling. Like, he kind of talked trash about the environment that the Lakers have. And it really puts in perspective how in trouble – is in trouble the right word? Maybe that's the right word. But it really shows how disorganized and dysfunctional this team really is, and it's something to really consider a major problem. And to fix it, I don't know. Maybe I think they need a year. Basically, they need this playoff year off. I mean, they totally can still play. I'm told they can still make the playoff. There's still a possibility. But when you look at the facts that they have a chance to miss the playoffs, more of a chance to then making it, really shows that maybe LeBron's at the end of his career too. I don't know. He's still playing well. He had one of his first major injury. Well, I would say first quote-unquote major injury of his career, that whole groin issue. I never been seeing him out that long. He's getting up there in age. And honestly, I think this just proves my point before. I said this in the sports podcast. There were talks when people said, oh, he's going to LA to be in Hollywood, to be in that market, to be in movies, in more opportunities in movies and stuff like that, because he's only been like one extra in a movie because he was in Miami and Cleveland. Miami's a big market too, but when it comes to making movies, you want to go into Hollywood. So LeBron's in Hollywood. He's making Space Jam 2. It's all coming together that LA was the intrigue, not the Lakers. The city was not the Lakers. And so with that, you got to look at the facts that LeBron is not, it feels like he's not fully focused on the team. Maybe he's focused on the team now because they're losing, but maybe he thought he could just wing it again and get into the playoffs again. I'm not sure what his motives were exactly. I think anyone did. But it feels like LA was more the attraction to him than the team itself, because of the fact that that team's just, it's not ready to win now. It's still in a rebuilding mode, and they just fast-forwarded all that to sign LeBron. It's like, all right, we're instantly contenders, which people assumed they were true. But, I mean, they're not. They're not contenders. If this team makes the playoffs by hook by crook, if they they'll make it into the 8th seed at best. They'll have to play the number 1 seed Warriors. So it'll be a finals rematch 2-3 rounds earlier. The Lakers are going to get swept. I have no doubt in my mind they're going to get swept. If it's the Clippers, they might win a game, probably swept. Majority of the teams will get swept against the Warriors nonetheless if they're going to be the 8th seed. But granted, it's one of those things where it's like, if you do make the playoffs, is it really worth it? See, the Kings are pushing for the playoffs because they don't have a first-round pick this year, because the Celtics are most likely going to get it. So it's not like they are playing for Zion, if you will. So if they make the playoffs and it's a successful year and it's not as high as a draft pick and it's not worth as much as it would have been. So that one makes sense. With the Spurs and it looks like the Clippers were looking to fail this season with giving rid of Tobias Harris. It looks like they were on a rebuild period and looking for the big guy contracts, as the max contracts for next season. But it looks like this team's still winning. This team's still contending, but we'll see how the Lakers and Clippers play tonight. And honestly, whoever wins this game really will show to me that that team is looking much better in the long run than the other one. And honestly, this might show if the Clippers will still have a chance to make the playoffs, or the Lakers are still have a fighting hope. But we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about all the games that happened this weekend and get all to them in detail. We'll be right back right after this.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We just finished up with the Lakers talk as well as college basketball talk. Now we are moving on to the weekend games. So Friday, we'll start with Friday since we did our show on Friday and we couldn't do anything else. But speaking of the Lakers' woes, it continued as they lost to the Bucks 131-120. Not shocking considering the Bucks are officially clinched a spot in the NBA playoffs. Not a number one seed yet, but they are still looking pretty darn good and pretty darn good favorites to make it to the finals. They're going to be one tough team to play when it comes down to playoff time. I personally would love to see a Raptors-Bucks series. I think that would be the best thing for the NBA. I would love to see it. And honestly, either the Raptors or the Bucks can give the Warriors a run for their money if the Warriors make it, which they probably will. The Bulls beating the Hawks 168-161 in quadruple overtime. How insane is that? Quadruple overtime. They Trae Young and Zach LaVine and Porter Jr. and Laurie all played for almost an hour, over 50 minutes for each of them. 3 guys on one team played for over 50 minutes. Trae Young played for 56 minutes, 49 points, 16 assists. LaVine had 47 himself. Porter had 31, and Laurie had 31 himself. This was an amazing game to watch. If you missed it, you missed one hell of a game. And I really enjoyed it. Who doesn't love a quadruple overtime, just like, oh my God, this game won't end type of thing, type of feel. It's just insane to think about it. But rookies with 40 points and 10 assists in a game in the last 40 seasons, MJ, LeBron, Trae Young. That's it. So Trae Young adds on to a very elite company, if you ask me. And fun fact, the Hawks have been involved in 3 of the last 4 quadruple overtime games in the NBA. So, interesting. And with what just happened, quadruple overtime is such a, what's the word I'm looking for? Exhausting game. Like, as a fan, you're like, oh, that's awesome. They just keep on going. Like, it's like a game that you don't want to end, that almost never ended. Like, it's one of those great moments where you're like, oh, that's such a great game. Like, I had fun watching it. I think everyone did. Almost went to 200 points for crying out loud. Next game, Pelicans beat the Suns 130-116. Anthony Davis played 21 minutes, got 17 points in that 21 minutes. Still shows that he's a serious contender for best player in the NBA. Even when it's in 21 minutes, he almost has a double-double, which is incredibly impressive. DeAndre Ayton on the other side, that was like the big matchup. DeAndre Ayton versus Anthony Davis in a sense. DeAndre Ayton did pretty good, 16 points, 8 rebounds, all things good. But it's Devin Booker with the total number of points with 26. But again, it goes to the Pelicans by 14 points. Raptors and Portland Trailblazers play each other in a battle of the two playoff teams. Raptors narrowly beating them 119 and 117. Damian Lillard missed a 3-point jump shot to win the game. It was Kawhi Leonard with the game-winning shot at the end of it. Marc Gasol with the new Raptors team, 19 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. Pretty good all-around game for him and his new team. Leonard with 38 points, still showing why he's one of the top players in the NBA and why this team is so darn good. And the Raptors are narrowing in on a first seed against the Bucks. It's a neck-and-neck race, at you will. Right now, if you look at it, Milwaukee has 48 wins and Toronto has 46 wins. So it's neck-and-neck. It's getting there. They're trying to make it into a race here for the first seed. Celtics win a game. They beat the Wizards 107-96. Even with Bradley Beal's 29 points, game-leading 29 points, it was not enough for the Wizards. Harsh for the Wizards, but a much-needed win for the Celtics to keep in their playoff, just to keep momentum going for the playoffs in the future. Last game, or 2 more games now, the Clippers beat the Kings in a big Western Conference matchup, 116-109. The Clippers hold on to a lead in the Western Conference playoffs by just a tad. If they lost that game, who knows where they would be right now, and the Kings may even be in that 8th seed. Who knows what would have happened there. So a much-needed win for the Clippers, definitely. Moving on to the Hornets in the Nets. Hornets win this one 123-112 against the Nets. Playoff teams going at it. Well, one team's holding on to a playoff spot for dear life. The other one seems pretty comfortable where they are. D'Angelo Russell, a 22.9 game, but the leading guy was Kemba Walker, 25 points. So if you're looking at the standings right now in the Eastern Conference, Charlotte and Brooklyn are 3 wins apart. Brooklyn is 32-33 and Charlotte's 29-34. So going just off let's just go from Detroit down. So number 6 is Detroit, number 7 is Brooklyn, number 8 is Orlando. So with the Charlotte win, they're still in hopes of the playoffs right behind Orlando, as Orlando taking the 8th seed at the moment. So there's still a chance for Charlotte and Miami to take a playoff spot. Washington, I'm not too sure, but Miami and Charlotte aren't out of it completely yet. So we got some tight races on the last spots when it comes both to the Eastern and Western Conference playoffs, which is super exciting. But when you look at the top 5 for each Western and Eastern Conference, it all is but sealed. We can just announce it now almost. But now they're just fighting for seeding and fighting for what part they'll be in the playoffs. They have to have one of these teams has a major collapse not to make the playoffs. So when it comes to the top 5 in the conferences. Moving on from that, we're going to Saturday. Jazz upset the Bucks 115-111. Even with Giannis's 43-point, 14 rebound, 8 assist game, was enough as Donovan Mitchell just went off. 46 points for the man, and just just under 50% from the field, 50% from the 3, 5 threes. Amazing game for him. Carries the Jazz to a victory over the number 1 seeded Eastern Conference Bucks, and shows that the Jazz are still a serious threat to those top teams. They aren't going anywhere. They were a threat last year. They gave it their all last year. They're still going to get it their all this year. It's still a possibility. There's still a lot of interesting hype going at it. So good win for the Jazz. For the Bucks, they're still fine in the long run. So going from there, and then of course we talked about this: the Suns beating the Lakers 118-109. LeBron's 27 points, 16 assists game, as well as Ingram's 25-point game. And even off the bench, JaVale McGee, 21 points was not enough, as Booker with 25, Ayton with 26 and 10, a double-double for him, and just some other help from the bench really put them over the top as they beat the Lakers, which puts the Lakers in serious jeopardy. In a playoff matchup, in a possible finals matchup, the Warriors played the 76ers with a victory for the Warriors as Durant goes off with a 34-point game. Curry also adds to 28 points, as well as Cousins comes back into his own with 25-point performance. Tobias Harris is 20, Simmons is 25, 15, 11 triple-double, as well as Jimmy Butler's 21 was not enough as they were missing their key ingredient to their team in Joel Embiid. So that hurts them there. But this shows that this team can hang with the Warriors, and with Joel Embiid healthy, if they play each other in the finals, they might give them a run for their money. So we'll see how that goes out. And next game is Grizzlies and Mavericks. And Grizzlies take this one 111-81. Just two bad teams. No playoff hopes for either of them. Not much to say about this one. Spurs beat the Thunder 116-102 in a big statement win to keep their playoff hopes alive. Westbrook had a pretty poor game, 19 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. Not a triple-double, but under 20 points does not seem his groove. Paul George not playing was a huge benefactor in the win for the Spurs. DeRozan with 18 points. Marcus Aldridge with the double-double, 27 points, 10 assists, just racking up the points down low. And it just shows that the Spurs aren't giving up that easily. Popovich is such a great coach that this team is always going to be a playoff contender when he's on the sidelines, even with the loss of his main core that got him 5 championships. The Heat are trying to find a place in their playoffs hopes, and they beat the playoff-seeded Brooklyn Nets 117-88, a huge blowout. Very disappointing for the Nets. Just no one came to play. No one passed 20 points. No one even passed 16 points on the Nets total. So that was that's all you really need to say about that. Just very big disappointment all around for the Nets and that embarrassing loss. Magic take the win against the Pacers, 117-112. Terrence Ross off the bench with 23 points. Great game for him. Collison for the Pacers, 23 points. Like, everyone played well. Bogdanovich for the Pacers got 25 points himself. So, a lot of good stuff. Even without Victor Oladipo, even though with the loss, the Pacers are still a pretty good team overall. And then the Pacers whooping the Cavaliers 129-93. And there's really not much to say other than a whooping. I mean, 129-93 really speaks for itself. But then now let's go on to Sunday, as we're going to Grizzlies Thunder, as the Thunder beat the Grizzlies, which they should have, 99-95, but they did it barely. Westbrook with 22 points. Steven Adams with 22 rebounds, an insane night for him on the rebounding front. When you get over 20 rebounds, it's always impressive nowadays, just based off of how just everyone's so aggressive going on the boards. Getting 22 rebounds really shows your dominance when it comes down to getting the boards. So with that, moving on to the Raptors and Pistons, as the Pistons upset the Raptors 112-107. Kyle Lowry's 35 points, really showing his stuff, was not enough, as the Pistons just played as a team. 4 out of the 5 starters had double-digit points. Double-double for Drummond with 17 rebounds, the rebounding machine. So but that was in overtime too. So they survived overtime against the Raptors. Shows that they can be a playoff team, which is exciting for them. Wizards beat the Timberwolves 135-121. Nothing really special there. Well, if you just look at the numbers, there's nothing really like, oh, that's amazing, except for maybe Karl-Anthony Towns' 28-point and rebound game. But from what I've already read, it just seems so underwhelming compared to every other great game people had. So sorry, Kat, but you still did good, though. Still did good. The Cavs beat the playoff-seeded Magic 107-93. So even the Cavaliers are winning, and LeBron's not. That's saying something. When the Cavaliers are winning without LeBron, I mean, they won one game. I'm just making it over-exaggeration, of course. But hey, they beat the Magic, like I said, and that's just the bottom line there. Moving on to the Hawks and Bulls so they're coming right off of the quadruple overtime. Sorry, on Friday, the Hawks get their revenge. 123-118 is the final. Hawks win this one. Trae Young does not get his amazing 40-point performance, but he does give up an 18-point performance in 18 minutes, so that's good for him. But he did get ejected, and it all started with a push by Dunn, who I think he shot at like a buzzer, or was it timeout or something, and then Dunn kind of shoved him and then Trae Young got in his face. But no, it was not really in his face. There was something in between them. But they both got double technical nonetheless. And then later in the game, Trae Young shoots a long-range three right in front of Dunn and then just kind of stands there and stares at him, just a stare down to him. Nothing like showboating or anything like that. Well, I mean, the stare down is kind of the showboating, but it's not like he's being obvious about it. Then the ref gives him a second technical and ejects him from the game. So, I don't know. I feel like this was a wrongfully ejected. I don't agree with it, personally. But I mean, it was his second tech, so just bad luck, I guess. It was going to be a tech regardless. I'm not sure. But, I mean, I don't think any punches were thrown or anything altercation happened in the first technical, but it's hard to recall. But regardless, it's one of those things where just like, that should not, no. Trae should not get ejected for something that small and insignificant. But that's my personal opinion with that. And now, moving on from that game to the Rockets and Celtics. Celtics disappointing in a loss to the Rockets, 115-104. James Harden with 42 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, still playing like a boss. Eric Gordon with 32 points himself. Maybe he'll get his own 30-point streak going. Kyrie Irving's 24.9 rebounds, 6 assist performance is not enough, as the question marks about this team continue. Celtics, I mean. And if this team is even a playoff caliber team anymore. So we'll see how they're going to be in the playoffs. I think that's for certain. But I think it's going to be difficult for them to get to at least the Eastern Conference Finals. So it's not going to be an easy road for the Celtics. It doesn't look good for them in the long run either. So we'll see how everything goes. If they trade for Anthony Davis or not and get rid of their young core players, or however this is going to go, we will see. But there's definitely some questions about the Celtics that have not been answered but are in need of answers. Maybe not in need of answers, but should be answered at when the time comes, when the playoff hits. So with that, we'll move on to the Knicks and Clippers. Clippers keep winning, holding on to their playoff spot by a score 128-107. Nothing really of note here. Just a solid game. Knicks lose again. Shocker. They're fighting for Zion, of course. Trailblazers hold on to their playoff hopes. Well, they're not losing those by a long shot. But 118-108. Charlotte is in trouble of missing the playoffs. So we'll see how all that goes down. And finally, for today, probably the most important game is Clippers and Lakers. We'll see how the Lakers handle the LA Clippers. And if they lose to the Clippers, they're in serious. If they lose this game, I'm saying 0 chance to make the playoffs. That's my prediction. If they lose, that is. Pelicans and Jazz. Pelicans not looking for playoffs, obviously, but Jazz are fighting for playoff seeding, so they'll probably play hard. And I got the Jazz win that one. Bucks and Suns. Number 1 in the East versus last place in the West. Yeah. Yeah, I don't see that happening. I don't see the Suns getting lucky anytime soon. And then we got the playoff matchup possibly between the Nuggets and the Spurs. As of right now, well, I think the Spurs are an 8th seed at the moment. Or if they're a 7th seed, they're going to be. If the playoffs ended right now, it'd be the Clippers facing the Nuggets and the Spurs facing the Warriors, as the Spurs are number 8 seed. So they got to hold on to this. They're seeding with all they can, but they're facing a tough Denver team ahead of them. So it's not going to be easy. And then we got the Mavericks and Nets. Basically, Nets fighting, keeping hold on a playoff spot. Mavericks not really fighting for much. Fighting for future, I guess, for bragging rights. I'm not sure what they would go for, but I don't think there's a chance they make the playoffs. So this is just a year for Luka just to win Rookie of the Year, and then you go on from there. Hawks and Heat. Let's see if all I want to look at is how impressive Trae Young looks, and if he's going to continue his role of scoring recently and continuing this game against the Heat in Miami. So we'll see how that goes. And then we also have the Knicks and Kings. Kings fighting desperately for a first playoff spot since 2006, as well as the Knicks are looking to lose and get Zion. Marvin Bagley's out with that knee injury he sustained against the Milwaukee Bucks a week ago. So he's trying to heal off that. He's getting more evaluated either this week or next week, so we'll see how that goes. But the Kings need this win to keep alive in the playoff hunt, as they're looking for their first playoff win, like I said, since 2006. So 13 years. So that'd be a cool Cinderella story if they even just make it to the playoffs. But with that, let's move on to that. Oh, that's the last play of the game. Okay, cool. So that should be it for the day. Thank you so much for joining us. Tomorrow we'll have some more. Actually, no. Wednesday we'll have more basketball news. And as always, I'm Jeff Malinoff. I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.